So hello everyone. Today's lecture is regarding thyroid hormones. Okay. So we will see what are the hormones that are produced by the thyroid gland, how are they produced, what are their physiological functions, how do we use them clinically in deficient states, and finally in the later part of the lecture we will see how the thyroid hormone synthesis is inhibited by certain drugs and how they are used in the treatment of thyrotoxicosis or hyperthyroidism. Okay, so these are the topics that will be covered in today's lecture. So thyroid gland produces basically two type of hormones. One group is the thyroxine and triiodothyronine that is produced by the follicular cells. Thyronine is a combination of two molecules of tyrosines. So when two molecules of tyrosine combine, they form what is known as tyrosine. And when iodination of that thyronine takes place, so that is, it produces iodothyronine, and tri and tetraiodothyronine are the hormones that are produced and secreted by the thyroid gland. Another group of cells that are present in the thyroid gland are the follicular C cells, medullary C cells, and these medullary C cells, they produce what is known as calcitonin. So thyroid gland as such produces two group of hormones. One is the thyroxine and second one is calcitonin. Now this calcitonin is related to regulation of calcium metabolism in the body, and it is a bit different from that of thyroxine and triiodothyronine, that is T3 and T4. So calcitonin will be taken up along with calcium metabolism. Okay, so here we are only going to see about this T3 and T4. Okay, our concern is this T3 and T4, and these are mainly known as thyroid hormones. So first and foremost, as far as any hormone is concerned, how it is synthesized, how it is stored in the gland, and how it is released, and what are the factors that regulate the secretion of the hormone. So first and foremost thing that is required or is essential for the synthesis of iodine of thyroid hormone, that is T3 and T4, is our iodine. It is our iodine. Okay, so this iodine is a must for the synthesis of thyroid hormones. So what is the journey of iodine from circulation within thyroid gland? Where do we get our iodine? So iodine is abundantly present in our diet and the drinking water that we drink. Okay, a lot of iodine is obtained from our diet. So now comes the steps that are involved in the synthesis of thyroid gland. Now, this is the follicular cell of thyroid gland. This is the blood supply of that follicular cell, and this is the inside of the follicular cell, and that is colloid is present. This is the apical membrane. This is the basolateral membrane. So first and foremost, the iodide which is present in the blood is concentrated in the follicular cell by the means of sodium iodide symporter or NIS. This pump actively concentrates iodide from the blood inside the cell in exchange of in along with sodium iodide symporter. It is an active pump. It utilizes energy. Now this iodide which is accumulated in the cell gets excreted from the basal apical membrane into the colloid, where it undergoes oxidation. Okay, where it undergoes oxidation either to iodous ion or hypoiodous acid. The enzyme used is peroxidase. Okay, so either iodide is converted to iodous ion, or H2O2 is combined with iodine to form hypoiodous acid. In the next step, the iodination of the thyroid globulin, the thyronine molecule that are present in the colloid takes place. Okay, colloid is nothing but the thyronine, two tyrosine molecules attached to a globulin protein. Okay, so thyroglobulin is there, and iodination of this tyrosine, the thyronine molecule takes place, producing, if one iodous molecule combines, 2-thyronine produces monoiodothyronine or diiodothyronine if two molecules are combined. This is a spontaneous reaction and no enzymatic catalysm or activity is required for this reaction. In the next step, what happens is, again our same thyroperoxidase enzyme is required for what is known as coupling, where two molecules of diiodotyrosine or one molecule of diiodothyronine is combined with another molecule of monoiodothyronine to produce T3 and T4 respectively, that is tetraiodothyronine and triiodothyronine. Okay, so this reaction is known as coupling reaction. This reaction is known as coupling reaction. Now at this stage, this thyroglobulin containing T3, T4 is again taken back into the follicular cell. Okay, it is again taken back into the follicular cell by means of process known as endocytosis. In the next step, by proteolysis, the contents of thyroglobulin are broken down into individual fragments whereby T3, T4, DIT, MIT, they are released. This T3, T4, they are released into the bloodstream and secreted as thyroid hormones. While the DIT and MIT, they form a source of utilizing iodide for again synthesis of this T3 and T4. Basically they are recycled back. Okay, so this is how the from iodine into the bloodstream to tetraiodothyronine and triiodothyronine is secreted into the bloodstream. Synthesis of thyroid hormone. First step is concentration of iodide inside the cell. Second step is oxidation of the iodide. Third step is iodination of the thyronine molecules. Next step is coupling. Then there is endocytosis and proteolysis. And finally, release into the bloodstream. So I hope this is very clear. Now why this figure is important, because various various drugs that act as inhibitors of the synthesis act at various sites, which we will see in the later part of this lecture. Okay. Okay. So coupling reaction is catalyzed by the peroxidase, and the simplified version I have shown here is that two molecules of DIT combine to form T4, while one molecule of DIT and another molecule of MIT combine to form T3 and T4. Now always remember, this reaction is more as compared to this reaction. So basically what we mean to say is that T4 is secreted in large quantities as compared to T3. Okay, so again in a flowchart manner I have shown the steps that are involved in synthesis and storage and release of the thyroid hormones. So first step, iodide uptake. Second step is oxidation of iodide by the enzyme thyroid peroxidase. Third step is iodination of tyrosyl groups of thyronine to produce mono and diiodothyronine. Next is coupling reaction, that is formation of T3 and T4. Again here the enzyme used is thyroid peroxidase. Then there is endocytosis and proteolysis, release of T3 and T4 in the blood, and in the periphery the T4 gets converted into T3 by peripheral deiodination or peripheral conversion. Enzyme used is deiodinase. So this is a flow chart which shows the synthesis, storage and release of the thyroid hormones. Now, how is the secretion of this thyroid hormones regulated? So thyroid gland is regulated by the pituitary, which in turn is regulated by the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus releases TRH, thyrotropin releasing hormone, which binds to the thyrotropes present in the anterior pituitary to release TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, also known as thyrotropin. So hypothalamus releases TRH, acts on the anterior pituitary. TSH is released, thyroid stimulating hormone, which acts on thyroid gland to stimulate the release of T3 and T4. So this is a positive feedback mechanism. While this T3 and T4, when released into the bloodstream, will inhibit both the release of TH and TSH, TRH and TSH, thyrotropin releasing hormone as well as thyrotropin. Both their release are inhibited. So this is a negative feedback mechanism. Okay, so this is how the thyroid hormone itself regulate their own release. If excess are there, they will act on the hypothalamus and pituitary to decrease their own release from the thyroid gland. So moving on, once again for your just revision sake, iodide, sodium iodide importer, iodide uptake, then crosses the basolateral membrane, apical membrane, oxidation takes place by the enzyme peroxidase, coupling takes place, iodination takes place, coupling takes place, again coupling is uh, undertaken by the enzyme peroxidase, endocytosis, proteolysis, T3, T4 release, T4 peripherally deiodinated to T3. So how these hormones are transported? In the blood, T3 and T4, they are combined to three plasma proteins. One is the thyroxine binding globulin, also known as TBG. Second is transthyretin, and third one is albumin. And T4 is converted mainly in the peripheral, the target tissues to T3 by the enzyme deiodinase 1 and 2. The T3 form is the more active form, while T4 form is the more transport form because it is stable, while T3 is a little bit unstable. So, okay, and the deiodinase enzyme type 3 converts T4 to reverse T3, which is inactive, and this is how T4 is inactivated. So you can see that T3 less is synthesized in thyroid, while T4 is more synthesized in thyroid. T4 basically serves as a transport and storage function. T3 is the active form, biologically active form. Half-life of T3 is 1 day, while half-life of T4 is about 7 days. The onset of action for T3 is rapid, while T4 has a slower onset of action. So these are the basic differences between T3 and T4. Now, how do these hormones act? So basically, thyroid hormones act by binding to the nuclear receptors. Thyroid hormone receptors are nuclear receptors which regulate gene expression. Okay, so they are located in the nucleus. Once you can see that this is the thyroid hormone receptor. Okay, in the unbound state, when hormone is not present, it is bound by co-repressor, which does not allow gene transcription to take place. Once the T3 comes, it binds to the thyroid hormone receptor. All these are the co-repressors are replaced by co-activators. It binds to the thyroid hormone response binding element, which is a gene, and its expression is increased. So what happens is there is increased transcription of DNA to mRNA, and these mRNA which in turn synthesizes proteins, and these proteins are responsible for the actions of thyroid hormones. So what are the physiological functions of thyroid hormones? Thyroid hormones are mainly involved in overall growth and development of body. In the absence of thyroid hormones, as seen in neonatal hypothyroidism, the general growth and development of the newborn does not take place. Also, thyroid hormones are highly essential for the development of central nervous system. So in neonates who are deficient of thyroid hormones, as in congenital hypothyroidism, they are mentally retarded because CNS development does not take place properly. Okay, and in children, okay, in children who are more than 1 or 2 years of age, deficiency of thyroid hormones leads to what is known as cretinism. So there is short stature, there is mental retardation, there are other growth defects, they are present in the child. Okay. Okay. Another effect of thyroid hormones is on the regulation of metabolism in our body and regulation of generation of body heat and thus regulation of the temperature. So thermogenic effect. Thyroid hormone, what it does is it uncouples oxidation from phosphorylation, resulting in production of heat. Okay, so this is how it regulates the body temperature. On the CVS, it excess of thyroid hormones is results in increased cardiac output, increased heart rate, even atrial fibrillation resulting in arrhythmias, and it results in hyperdynamic circulation. Metabolic effects, there is increased protein breakdown and there is increased catabolism, and these protein broken down is used for energy generation. Nitrogen balance is negative, tissue wasting and muscle loss is seen. Also there is weight loss. Now these are signs or these are the symptoms that are present in excess of thyroid hormones. Normal or euthyroid status is responsible for the normal basal metabolism of an individual. In lipid metabolism, there is increased lipolysis, there is increased cholesterol metabolism. Cholesterol is degraded into bile acids. Carbohydrate, there is increased metabolism, there is increased gluconeogenesis, there is increased glycogenolysis, so increased blood glucose level. So hyperthyroidism is always associated with insulin resistance and hyperglycemia. Now, where are these thyroid hormones used? Okay. So thyroid hormones, they're mainly used, the only indications of using thyroid hormones is in replacement therapy. When the body is not able to produce uh, required amount or desired amount of thyroid hormones and there is resulting deficiency of T3 and T4 in our body. Now, two types are there. One is the children or childhood hypothyroidism, which is known as cretinism, and another one is adult hypothyroidism, which is also known as myxedema. Okay, so for both type of hypothyroidism, the preparation used are same, and mainly the thyroxine or levothyroxine or LT4 preparation is used, and most of the time it is used on an OPD basis as oral tablets. One tablet of the desired dose is given on an empty stomach as a morning dose, single dose in the morning on empty stomach. That's it. It usually is more than enough in treating or as a replacement of hypothyroid hormones. Usually monitoring is done by measuring the T3, T4 and TSH levels of the individuals after every initially after every 3 to 4 weeks. Once the dosage has been um, derived by this monitoring and the T3, T4 and TSH are in the normal range, then every 6 months to 1 year follow up checking of this T3, T4 levels and TSH levels is done, and thus a dosage is adjusted. Adult hypothyroidism is myxedema. Again, it could be due to Hashimoto's thyroiditis or it could be due to thyroidectomy or after radioactive iodine. So if due to any cause the thyroid gland is destroyed, then it is not able to produce sufficient amount of thyroid hormones and we need to supply external thyroid hormones in such conditions. Okay, again for the same we mainly use levothyroxine LT4 and by oral route. Liothyronine L3, that is also available. It is mainly used in only one condition, and that is myxedema coma, which we'll see in the next few slides. So next slide is myxedema coma. It is a severe form of hypothyroidism. Okay, so it is usually a medical emergency, and the patient is usually old, frail individual who has not taken thyroid hormone supplements for a long time. Okay, or maybe suffering from other conditions like infection or diabetes and any such condition. Okay, three things are to be present in an individual to make a diagnosis of myxedema coma. One is hypothermia, the body temperature should be low. Respiratory depression, the respiration should be shallow and slow. And finally the patient should be unconscious. So how will we treat such a patient? We hospitalize the patient, and rapid treatment with thyroid hormones is the treatment of choice. Usually levothyroxine T4 parenteral is used, okay, by IV route is used, but sometimes if available levo T3 can also be used. The advantage of T3 is that it can have rapid onset of action. So onset of action is rapid as compared to T4, but otherwise usually T4 is given. Along with that, you need to stabilize the patient, you need to maintain the body temperature, increase the body temperature, you need to give IV fluids, you see that whether the patient's respiration is improving or not. All these emergency measures have to be taken, followed by uh, injection or administration of thyroid hormones. Along with that, steroids for a short period of time has to be given. Okay, so this is the treatment of myxedema coma. So this figure again, it shows the synthesis. This is for revision purpose only. The synthesis, storage and release of thyroid hormones. So once again, follicular cells, just a small revision. The follicular cells of the thyroid gland, they secrete mainly T3 and T4. The T3 is the active form, T4 is mainly the transport form. Synthesis, the iodide uptake, oxidation, iodination, coupling, endocytosis, proteolysis, release, conversion of T4 to T3 in the peripheral tissues. Transport by binding to plasma proteins, thyroxine binding globulin, transthyretin, and you have albumin. Inactivation, receptors are nuclear in nature. Okay, mainly the thyroid hormones are responsible for growth and CNS development, thermogenic and regulation of metabolism. Replacement is required in pediatric hypothyroidism, which is known as cretinism, or adult hypothyroidism, which is known as myxedema, and one emergency condition, that is myxedema coma. So this portion covers the um, thyroid hormones, the physiological function, and how we can use them in deficient states. The next portion is related to the excess of thyroid hormones. Okay, how do we treat excess of thyroid hormones or hyperthyroidism? So we use drugs that inhibit synthesis, inhibit release, or destroy the thyroid gland itself, and these are known as thyroid inhibitors. Okay, so thyrotoxicosis is result of thyroid hormone excess or hyperthyroidism. It may be due to two causes. It may be due to Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disorder where the antibodies, they target the thyroid follicular cells. What happens is that these antibodies behave like TSH, so they go on stimulating the follicular cells, which in turn goes on increasing the secretion of T3 and T4, resulting in thyroid hormone excess. Or it could be due to, a toxic nodular goiter. Enlarged thyroid gland is, so another one is toxic nodular goiter. Okay, that is the second portion. Uh, Here, what happens is, due to any reason, the thyroid gland is enlarged and it produces too much thyroid hormones. What are the symptoms of thyrotoxicosis? So there is hyperactivity, there is irritability, dysphoria, heat intolerance, sweating, palpitation, fatigue, weakness, weight loss, increased appetite, diarrhea, polyuria, oligomenorrhea, and loss of libido. What are the signs? So usually on examination of pulse, you will find tachycardia and irregular pulse. Maybe there may be atrial fibrillation. Tremors are there at resting, and goiter, enlarged neck region swelling is seen. There is an enlarged thyroid gland may be seen. Warm, moist skin, muscle weakness, lid retraction and lag, and gynecomastia may be seen. So these are the signs of thyrotoxicosis. Now, how do we treat the thyroid hormone excess? So what we can target is we can inhibit the synthesis of hormone by inhibiting the thyroid peroxidase enzyme. Once we inhibit the enzyme, this coupling and oxidation reaction will not take place, and ultimately T3 T4 will not be synthesized. Second thing which what we can do is we can inhibit the proteolysis and release of T3 and T4 so that hormone remains stuck in the gland itself and it does not get released into the bloodstream. Third thing which we can do is we can inhibit the accumulation of iodide by using the sodium iodide symporter. So we can inhibit that symporter and inhibit that concentration of iodide into the follicular cell. And finally, the fourth thing which we can do is we can destroy the gland, the follicular cell itself. So what are the drugs? Those that inhibit thyroid hormone synthesis, that is, they are inhibitors of thyroid peroxidase enzyme, propylthiouracil, carbimazole, methimazole. Those that inhibit iodide trapping, that is, they inhibit the sodium iodide symporter. You have perchlorate, thiocyanate, nitrates. Those that inhibit the release of, that is, thyroid hormones, that is, proteolysis and release is inhibited. So you have iodine, iodides of sodium and potassium, organic iodides. And finally, we can destroy the thyroid gland by using radioactive iodine I-131. So first is thyroid peroxidase inhibitors. These are known as antithyroid drugs. They are synthesis inhibitors. They inhibit the thyroid peroxidase enzyme and thus they inhibit coupling as well as oxidation of iodine. Three drugs are there: propylthiouracil, carbimazole and methimazole, where methimazole is the metabolite of carbimazole. Okay, they interfere with oxidation of iodine and they inhibit the coupling reaction. So the only difference between propylthiouracil and carbimazole is that propylthiouracil is less potent while carbimazole is more potent. Short half-life, so you have to give propylthiouracil more frequently, while long half-life, so carbimazole has to be given mostly twice a day. T4 to T3, peripheral conversion of T4 to T3 by deiodinase enzyme is inhibited by propylthiouracil, not by carbimazole. While the carbimazole produces an active metabolite, methimazole. The onset of action of thyroid peroxidase inhibitors is slow. Why? Because the thyroid peroxidase inhibitors, they inhibit the synthesis of new hormones. Whatever hormones that has already been synthesized and stored in the follicular cells, it needs to be depleted first, following which the action of thyroid peroxidase inhibitors start appearing. Okay, so only when the preformed hormone is depleted, the concentration of circulating thyroid hormone decreases and then clinical effect become noticeable. So improvement usually starts after 1 to 2 weeks of treatment. Adverse drug reactions, mainly GI tract. Okay, that is nausea, vomiting and diarrhea. Allergic, rash. The most important is hypothyroidism. So when given in excess, more severe lowering of the T3 T4 levels resulting in hypothyroidism. Loss of hair, loss of taste sensation, fever, these are the other side effects, and propylthiouracil is associated with agranulocytosis and liver damage. So these are the adverse effects of thyroid peroxidase inhibitors. Where do we use them? In the treatment of Graves' disease, preoperatively for thyroidectomy, and along in the treatment of thyroid storm, where only propylthiouracil is preferred. So we'll see this thyroid storm treatment in the later part of the structure. During pregnancy, propylthyrosol is preferred because it is less transferred across placenta. Okay. The next group is those that inhibit proteolysis and release of hormones. Okay. So these are iodine and iodides. High concentration of iodine and iodide, they inhibit proteolysis and they inhibit the release of hormones from the gland. So they are known as thyroid constipators. Okay. Now, these are the fastest acting drug. Their onset of action is within 24 hours. Maximum effect takes place at about 10 to 15 days, after which their beneficial effect disappears. So long-term treatment is not possible with this group of drugs. Adverse drug reactions: acute angioedema and serum sickness, while chronic it leads to iodism. So there is inflammation of mucous membranes, rhinorrhea, lacrimation, sneezing, headache, salivation, etc. Preparations are available are Lugol's solution, that is 5% potassium, 5% iodine in 10% potassium iodide. Where do we use them? Mainly preoperatively. So before undergoing thyroidectomy, preoperatively when we give Lugol's iodine, what happens is rapidly controls symptom and gland becomes less vascular, so less bleeding takes place. Also in the treatment of thyroid storm, where we rapidly want to control the symptoms of hyperthyroidism, where we can use iopanoic acid. In addition to producing thyroid constipation, it also inhibits the peripheral conversion of T4 to T3. Another use of iodine is to protect the thyroid from radioactive iodine in a nuclear fallout, and iodized salt is used to prevent endemic goiter. Okay, so this is a small revision. You know this. Peroxidase inhibitors are propylthyrosol, carbimazole, methimazole. Propylthyrosol has additional action of inhibiting the conversion of T4 to T3. Adverse drug reaction are hypothyroidism and agranulocytosis. Excess of iodide or iodine produces thyroid constipation, and it is the fastest onset of action. Last is radioactive iodine. So the radioactive iodine, when given orally as a sodium iodide salt, the iodide in the bloodstream gets concentrated in the thyroid gland. And these radioactive iodine, which concentrated in the thyroid gland, emits various radioactive rays, alpha, beta and gamma. This beta particle is responsible for destroying the follicular cells. Half-life is about 8 days. The only drawback is its effect is slow. So the peak effect occurs at about 3 to 6 months. Advantage of radioactive iodine: OPD treatment. Okay, surgery is not required, so all the surgical problems, all the surgical side effects, they are removed, and cure when achieved is permanent. The only drawback is hypothyroidism also, if occurs, is also permanent. So we need to give replacement T3, T4 if hypothyroidism occurs. Contraindicated in pregnancy, we cannot give. And there is a long latency period. The onset of action is slow. Ionic inhibitors, that is those that inhibit the sodium iodide symporter, thiocyanate perchlorate, they are not used because of serious organ toxicity. Okay. One more drug which we use in thyrotoxicosis is beta blocker propranolol. It does not have direct effect on thyroid gland, its hormones or its synthesis. But what happens is beta blocker controls the cardiac symptoms that are associated with hyperthyroidism. So rapid control of symptoms of sympathetic overactivity in thyrotoxicosis. So tremors, tachycardia and nervousness, all these three things are gone. Last is thyroid storm, thyrotoxic crisis. We give propylthyrosol, okay, we give iopanoic acid. Both these are preferred because both these drugs, they inhibit the peripheral conversion of T4 to T3, which is the active form. Another thing which we give is propranolol, rapid control of symptoms, hydrocortisone and supportive care. So these are the drugs that are used, okay, and thyrotoxicosis treatment consists of three things: antithyroid drugs, radioactive iodine and surgical thyroidectomy. So thank you very much.